tell people all the time, I say, you're good looking. I said, because you've only seen my pictures. I photograph well, I'll admit that. But I don't look like I do in those pictures. I look like a good looking guy on Facebook because I crop out this big fat gut. I don't show any pictures where I got my double chins. And I'm trying not to bore you guys because I just did a blog radio program with these two, and I don't want to read the same ones over and over again.
Read them over.
But I have a habit of reading,
Read
you know what I
them
mean?
over, especially my favorite one in the apple pie.
I just wanted to let you all
Fried
know,
green tomatoes.
everyone, on July 1st, Inner Child Magazine feature will be Justin, a review of Trailer Park Troubadour and a bio of Justin. So
Excellent.
comes out July 1st from Inner Child Magazine.
Well, I look forward to that. When you say my favorite one, what are you talking about?
The fried green tomatoes.
The Mason-Dixon, the reason I'm a poet?
Yes.
Okay.
I like that.
Let's see if I can, that may be one of the best ones for me, that I've ever written to you. And, you know, it's funny because most of my poems are not Bukowski-esque. Most of my poems are not like the Catfish poem that I read right at the end. Very simple, conversational, almost poetry about, you know, getting fucked up all the time and dating. You know what I mean? Very few of them, but that's the ones people talk about the most. The truth is that most of the poems that I write have to do with how much I love Arkansas and this area and these people. And, you know, I did not know how much I loved it as a kid and was so eager to run away from Arkansas because the people are dumb and they're country and stupid, and you know what I mean, and they don't understand me.
We talk funny.
Yeah, and
Y'all are prettier than catfish.
I went all over the exact for using messy catfish. I went all over the country and I did, well, literally all over the world. I was in the military, and the truth is I love a lot of places, but I don't love any place any more than I love, you know, the place where my grandfather broke the dirt and farmed, and you know what I mean, and my dad was in love with that life, but just couldn't make it anymore because the divorces had busted the farms down into smaller and smaller sections. And I'm glad I'm not a farmer, but I'm still glad that I come from that line. This is called Mason-Dixon Lines. If I'm a poet, I owe it to the air of Arkansas. I owe it to flour-battered, pan-fried main courses on Mama's Sunday table, to bacon grease seasoned vegetables from her garden. If I have stories to tell, they are stories shared with me by deep-lined, tan-faced old men who meet and talk daily at small-town post offices, who tamed the sunken lands, who cut and floated timber in Ozark's youth. I owe it to my Big Smith pinstriped overalls every day of his life grandfather, who worked the soil of Milligan Ridge from the steel saddle of a chugging, spitting Farmall tractor, and sometimes busted red ball snooker racks in town for fun. If I'm a poet with anything to say at all, it is because I have known complex country girls who read Faulkner and clip coupons and fight tooth and nail for family and friends in need. Maybe I'm a poet because I shot guns with my father, bourbon with my brothers, and much, much worse with a girl from Alabama I met in a Christian rehab. If I'm only a poet, it is only because I dream dreams of the first love I lost and live with regret still of 1,000 other choices I've made. I am a poet because of Dixie Ragtime and barbed wire prison blues, 4th of July family reunions, and south of Mason-Dixon moonlit nights.
Yeah.
Father's Day is when?
Pass.
Last week?
Yeah, last
I don't know. I never get a call, so I don't know. It's Karma. I never called on their birthdays. So this is called A Father's Gift. Real weird. I think maybe the most fragile relationship in the entire world is that of father and son. It's difficult not to get in a large penis contest with another man, even if he is your father. And it's difficult to show him respect, it's difficult for him to show you respect, and it's just a difficult relationship altogether. When it's right, it's maybe the most beautiful thing in the world. But I think at least in cowboy America, we have a tough time with it. A father's gift. Everything I ever learned about the hustle, I learned from my father. He never ran game, but on Sunday mornings, he'd hold us in the palm of his hand. In a neat line on stubborn wooden pews with Mom, 2 brothers and 3 sisters, I sat while Dad, who was a high school dropout, taught me unknowingly the power a keen vocabulary and a clever story has over a man. I learned that speaking softly drew the ears closer, and that meter is the most important tool of all. I was schooled in the value of giving them something to believe in, even if they couldn't see it. Everything I ever learned about grinding for dope and money, I learned from my father in a small country church on a dusty gravel road. Come on through. I would feel ridiculous reading to 4 people, but I've read the less. When we started, I didn't start it actually. When I first, I was still homeless, and I'd already gotten where I was sending submissions, and I think we'd all met. Certainly we'd all met, and you know, I was trying to like anything because you don't know. I mean, nobody tells you, and even if they do, they don't know either. You know how you get to be known, how you study this thing, especially when you don't have any resources. I joined the River Market Poets Group, which is they're older women, for the most part, not all. And it originally started as a women's poetry group in Arkansas a long, long time ago. And but I've learned a lot from them. But about the same time, Vino's, my friend Dylan Jackson, started poetry reading. At that time, it was every Sunday night. And it was, you know, I mean, I wanted a place to read my stuff. And when I went, and it was 2 blocks from where I literally slept outside, okay? When I went, as soon as I walked in, they would buy me my own pitcher of beer. They would not sit with me and drink the pitcher of beer with me. I smelled bad, I'm sure. But they would buy me a pitcher of beer as soon as I walked through the door. Well, I was there every Sunday. You can bet that. The place is air conditioned to sit and drink beer, and people tell me how smart and clever I am. You betcha I'm there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was still using. I would sometimes leave right in the middle, go cop, and come back again, you know what I mean? But, you know, it's very important to me that opportunity that I had there. And when we first started, sometimes it would just be Dylan reading to me, and then I'd read to Dylan. There'd be no one else there, and we hung out. And now we only do it once a month. And last month, probably had easily 40 people. And that's unheard of for a poetry reading. It's just unheard of. You don't see it. But the trick is that
I go there.
yeah, you should. You guys should definitely, if you ever get an opportunity. And what you should do is wait until like October to do it, and you can do us and the Blues Festival, Helen Blues Festival at the same time.
Yeah.
Right on. But anyway, you know, a lot of people say that anymore that poetry doesn't have the same significance it used to have, and that poets only sell to other poets. And that, you know, and to be honest, there's some truth in that, and I'm not even mad about it. You know what I mean? Because the same person that loves poetry, loves to read it, is obviously going to be inspired to want to write it, and so that's a sort of natural progression. But what I like to think that I do that's a little different, I like to think that I write poetry. What my intent is, what I try to do, is to write poetry that is still significant, that is still intelligent, that is still literature, but is accessible to every single person. You know, I jokingly said I want Mouthwash Jimmy to be able to read my poetry too. The truth is, Mouthwash Jimmy's one of the smartest people I ever met in my life. He's not the issue, you know what I mean? But I want Joe Plummer, and I want Mrs. Housewife, and I want guy who didn't even want to graduate high school because he was eager to get a job at the brake factory. I want all those guys to know the beauty of poetry too. And so my attempt then with my life is that someday I will write it beautiful enough to where those people get the same feeling that I do when I read, say, John Ciardi or somebody like that. I was stoned in love. This is called On a Puddle of Water. I was stoned in love 1,000 rains ago. Hundreds of dark clouds opening, sunlight creeping through, thick as a brick skin now. Face set sure as concrete, wrinkles, eyes weighed heavy with bags and molds and other stupid things, teeth bad, and a storm is stirring. But I just might love a barroom girl, pretty as sunlight on a puddle, so I go on. Pretty as sunlight on a puddle of water, I am stoned in love, so I go on. Taking chances on sunshine and late spring afternoons.
Friday.
I'll get one more in then. Let me read the biggie. How's that? How about I do this one? Yeah, the big, long, epic. While I was in Malvern, I already had the first chapbook. I had already had some little bit of recognition locally with poets. We already knew each other before I went to Malvern. I went to prison again since that time 3 years ago. I was riding in a car with somebody. I got picked up for a violation, not because I was using it again, but you still owe it to them. It's still theirs. I mean, I still don't own my time, to be honest with you. Just between us, I'm on the run right now. But
Just between us is a video going on YouTube right now.
Just between us, I put up flyers all over Little Rock where they're looking for me, where I'm going to be. They don't care. I'm not committing any felonies. Yeah, they're killing each other in Little Rock. They don't care about me.
Publicly speaking and saying.
Yeah, here's the deal. I owe it to them. When they come and get me, I'll give it to them, but I ain't going to find them to give it to them. You know what I mean? I got a book on hold waiting for the day I go to prison. Bam, it gets published. I intend to make money by going back. This is called Haunted, and I wrote it while I was in Malvern for a contest. I don't know if you guys know about the National Poets Roundtable Association, I believe it's called, and then it's broken down in their state levels and da-da-da-da-da. Well, the little group that I belong to that larger group, and they have state contests every year. And I am not a contest guy, not because I can't win them. The only contests I've ever entered are through this organization. They usually have like 30 a year, some big and some little. Big prize might be $5,000 for the one. And then a lot of little, where you might make $5 for an honorable mention or something like that, whatever. But I'm resistant to it because I just don't believe, no matter how smart you are, you have any right to tell me this poem is better than this poem. You can tell me you enjoy this poem more than this poem, but what makes a good poem and doesn't make a good poem is a magical thing. It is not something you can say A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4, or else everybody that wanted to learn how to do it would be able to do it. Right? So I have disdain for contests to my own financial ruin. But I did write this poem for a contest because I was very interested at the time. The prompt was that it had to be an real Arkansas ghost story. Then you had to have documentation, right, to say this is what I'm talking about, this is the event, da-da-da-da. You don't have to believe in ghosts or not believe in ghosts, but there has to be a real existing story, da-da-da-da. Well, I was in prison at the time, and there's always, every unit you go to, and now I know after being in and coming out and talking to other people around the country, apparently every prison in the world, there are these ghost stories of the guys, if they've got, the big punishment. And so I started studying about when Arkansas was younger, we only had one prison, and it was in Little Rock, and it was called the Walls, and they had the same name for the electric chair that the ones they have now was Old Sparky. The original, they called him Old Sparky. And there was lots and lots of stories about they'd execute a guy and then they'd hear that guy walking up and down the halls and they'd hear keys rattling and prisoners tell it to other prisoners. And it's kind of like church camp or something like that. It's just a tradition. I doubt very many of them actually believe it, but you still tell them. You gotta understand that a lot of people that come to prison are kids. 17, 18-year-old kids, and it's fun to mess with them. You know what I mean? So, you got nothing else to do. You know what I mean? And so these ghost stories get perpetuated over and over again. Well, I wrote a poem about a person, but the truth is, this is maybe a half a dozen real people all mushed together. This is called Haunted. And if you guys don't mind, because I'm so tired, I'm going to take my teeth out. Because I can read clearer without the men. I'm not used to talking with the men yet. But because I'm so tired, it's difficult for me to enunciate right now. So you'll just have to see me snaggletooth. His paw, long gone, mama frazzled and busy pulling cuckleburrs that refused to make way for white tufted king cotton. Her nights, keeping shotgun shack spotless and smelling of neck bones and soup beans. Finally, top Jimmy scripture lit by coal oil lamp. Nobody cared that the bastard son of a suitcase sundry salesman wandered shiftless down back roads, hot sunbaked sand squishing between his toes, dressed in worn overalls, shiny at the knees, listening to mid-row filled hand voices rising even as backs bent, old slave songs so sad that he felt unalone. When he was almost a man, angst gave way to anger, fueled by clear homemade liquor. The cotton patches of black oak could no longer contain him. In Memphis, he held a mulatto girl dear. But she laughed and called him boy. He hit her, and she fell shimmy limp. So he fled back across the river, stealing chickens all the way to Little Rock, and started capital life as a stick-up kid. After a pinch and a nickel at the walls, he went right back to the life and shot a man while robbing an Esso station. When he pulled the pistol, the fellow with the bow tie and the greasy fingernails had smirked. By the time he left the general population of Tucker State Pen, moving into 2 barracks with 7 other men who shared death row, 2 rows of 4 cells, and of course, Old Sparky. He had hand-picked an ugly green tattoo that read Ma into his forearm with a safety pin wrapped in thread. He had also suffered whippings at the hands of redneck guards with wide leather belts and been sodomized by a sneering man named Chick and 2 flunkies who laughed every time he cried out in pain and humiliation. The cries, the nightmares of his life haunted him each night like shadows, unrelenting. His neighbor, a disembodied voice named Pop, thick as sorghum molasses, helpful and kind, told stories of the ghost that old Sparky had let loose to wander in eternal unrest. The raspy sounds of shackles dragging or soul-piercing screams everyone on the row heard and knew they were real. Pop was sitting next to Fry. Sleep was not easy. Spectral tales told through low vents on graffito walls next to toilet bowls filled with time. Black Oak's own son sat Indian style on cold concrete floor and shuddered. No relief in sight, no rest for the wicked. The unit secured 23 hours a day, echoed with successive slamming steel door sounds. Sometimes the bare lights dimmed as if the sizzle chair had just made love to another. The bulls came and shaped Pop's cotton top locks. The oily voice in the vent was quiet that night. Whether the glitch was an act of sadism by guards or poltergeists, Pop was being tortured. His normal pitch-thick voice rising, Mo Juice, God almighty, Mo Juice, writhing in restraints like a spring slug on salted sidewalk. Sweet baby Jesus, Mo Juice. Finally giving up the ghost. Alone again with the ghost of his past. with the smirking bow-tied SO man, with the high yellow girl he would have loved, with the absent father who sinned with his mother, with the sounds of clanging steel and the ghastly smell that reminded him of his schoolmate falling, hands out, into the Franklin stove years ago. The gusts of breeze that accompanied the opening of his own tumble-locked steel door cool on the freshly shorn scalp. He rose and became the dead man walking, shuffling between the uniformed angels of death and strapping in alone again for the last switch-thrown moment, alone. But, do you know the Nose, the guy they call the Nose, black guy from The Rock that was involved with, what's the guy, he's dead now, the dynamic,
Joel Quinney.
right, he was involved with McQueen. In fact, he killed a man when he was very young. They were high on heroin together and drug. He did heroin long before it was a cool and popular thing when only black people were doing heroin, right? Yeah, and the truck was stuck. They were in a truck and it got stuck in the ditch. They were friends, mind you, and they were changing the tire. And the guy got mad at the guy they called the Nose, Lewis Mosley. And
Oh, I knew Lewis.
okay, yeah, and
Oh, yeah. He
yeah.
used to be a fighter.
exactly. He turned around and smacked that guy to keep him off of him with the tire tool, and it just killed him like that. A weird freak accident. And Lewis Mosley went to prison for about 50 years, maybe longer. And while he was in there, he wasn't supposed to get out, but he used heroin for a long time. Then he got clean. Then he taught the substance abuse classes. He literally got a job after he was released from prison. He had a key to the prison that he had served time in for murder.
Wow.
And I love the guy. I loved him. He's gone now, but
I met Lewis.
right. But a lot of this story is based on him and stories he told me. And when prisons in Arkansas, especially, they were killing people.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I got chills just thinking about my poem doesn't do justice to the Lewis Mosley stories. He's and I love him. I loved him. He was the only one when I was at that rehab that
Justin, you know enough people to do a call out to pull his stories together?
I'm sorry.
Do you know enough people to do a call out? In other words, to get his stories put together?
I don't. Here's the issue I have though. Okay, I maybe do and maybe don't, but the truth is I only know him through an anonymous situation where it would be not right for me to say his name out loud.
Well, not to qualify, not to put yourself in that position, but I think it's really powerful that you're aware of this person's stories. They were so powerful for you. What's sad is we don't know them.
Well, you guys don't, but many people do.
Yeah, but you-
Right,
Yeah.
but
I
it
tell you
would
what,
be,
I would argue you wouldn't have to necessarily disclose where you knew him from.
Well, that's true. That's true too. That's true too. This is a guy that played with Johnny Cash while he was in prison,
Wow.
and then went to a Johnny Cash concert years later, and Johnny Cash called him up on stage. Remember?
Nice.
He's that guy. Okay, I'm not saying he wasn't a mess when he was young. You know what I mean? But he is good and strong and smart, and he's all those things that you would want in a father. And he was a father to me when I was in a place where they didn't get me. I'm rebellious. I do not work well in programs. I still don't believe in using hard drugs, but I can't. I mean, I do what works for me. I don't tell people to follow my path. But
I was saying,
Yeah,
let's
he's
find
phenomenal.
the stories.
well, and maybe I will. I talked to him at one point about writing something bigger, and he said that was fine as long as I didn't give away, his last name and like that. But truth is, it's going to have to wait a minute. I got so many of my own stories I'm telling right
understand
now.
that.
Yeah.
Right? Did anyone else want to read anything?
We're running over time, but I think that we're okay until someone, I also would like to show you all through the art gallery.
Please.
But I know Andrew wanted to share something, and after that, I would like to share one thing.
Certainly. Yeah.
I have two pieces to share.
Okay, awesome. All right, you go after Andrew
Well, I didn't
then.
mean to be hogs with time. I had no idea.
This was written by a best friend of mine, who happens to be a doctor of social work. I don't hold that against her too much. It's called Mental Illness is Not a Crime. Mental illness is not a crime by Heidi Hepford. Mental illness is not a crime, nor is it contagious. When you love someone diagnosed with a